Okay, for more on global port expansions and their impact, we welcome George Hamlin, president of the Hamlin Transportation Consulting. Welcome to Biz Asia America. These ports that are preparing for this Panama expansion, I think to understand what the ports are doing, we have to understand what Panama is doing. They've got big shipping lanes already, but they're building bigger and bigger ships. Because of that, they need to build bigger and bigger canals. That's going to be done in 2 years. It's called post-Panamax.
Right.
How big of a difference is that going to change the landscape of the shipping world?
Well, this is an order of magnitude almost different and bigger. It's going to keep costs down, possibly even actually reduce costs, and it may change the way some goods are shipped between Asia and the U.S.
I want to show you a graphic that we put together for you, and it shows kind of going back to the early days of shipping, the changes in the size of the ship. You can see on the top of the screen there that those were the early days of shipping. They're relatively small, and as you get bigger and bigger, they're calculated by the number of containers each ship holds. So the first ones was only a few hundred, then we got the few thousand, and now these big ships, George, they hold 15,000, 16,000 containers. I mean, I wouldn't want to be the person unloading all these containers, but they're so big they don't even fit in most U.S. ports. Ultimately, the economic impact of the bigger ships, the bigger canal, you're saying that's going to be good for the global economy. Is that correct?
Yes. Now, to put it in perspective, it takes several trainloads of containers stacked too high, what are referred to as double stacks in the railroad business, just to haul all of these goods away.
Now, one would argue that if I buy a toy from, say, Hong Kong or China, and that gets shipped, say, to New York City, to run it by ship and then put it on a train in, say, San Francisco, in total it takes 18 days. To go around through the canal it takes 21 days. Some would argue is that, well, it still takes a shorter time to go by train. Why is shipping better?
Well, shipping, the unit cost of shipping is better because you have this absolutely enormous vehicle in the form of the ship that has essentially the same number of crews as on smaller ships. And you get some economies of scale out of fuel usage, et cetera, so that the cost of shipping is less than the cost of rail. Now, if you're in something like fashion merchandising, where, well, a lot of that, some goods go by air for that reason, even though it's far greater expense. But time-certain delivery has leveled the playing field in a lot of cases, that if you know when the goods are coming and you can get them cheaper, that actually satisfies the shipping needs of many.
As with any big project, there are people who are proponents who are for it, and there are people who are against it for a variety of reasons. I suspect that there are people at these ports who live near the ports or in those areas that say there'd be an increased pollution. It could adversely affect people's health depending on the air quality situation. Do they have a legitimate concern?
Yes and no. And some of this is, look, there are more and more people in the world. This is sort of like as cities in metropolitan areas develop, what used to be farmland becomes homes. And if you live in New York City and you are above Wall Street, that applies to you because Wall Street was named because it was the end of Manhattan in New York at one point. So,
well, perhaps one example might be in Los Angeles, where Union Pacific and the other railroads that serve those ports that ship the goods from Asia onto the Midwest and to the East Coast, they're building some new transfer facilities. And the locals, they were very upset about the fact that there'd be all these trains would have all this diesel would be bad for the air, and of course we would breathe that in. So they worked out a deal that they would install next generation locomotives, they would lower the air quality and all these standards, and it was sort of a public-private type of partnership. Do you think that that will be the norm in the future for all port projects?
Absolutely. There's a lot of attention being paid to emissions, but what people are ignoring is the emissions that are coming out of the modest number of locomotives compared to the hundreds of tractors that would have pulled trucks out of this is vastly different. Now, on the East Coast, there are some significant rail projects. Some are already done. Some are still going. The Norfolk Southern has had its Heartland project to enlarge its route between basically the Hampton Roads area and the Midwest. Similarly, the CSX, its main competitor in the East, is the National Gateway Project, which will eventually benefit the Port of Baltimore.
Last question that has been bugging me ever since we started talking about the Panama Project is there's this little thing in the Arctic Ocean, it's opening up, and there's this Northwest package which would be a game changer. Is it real? Could it be a game changer?
Is it real? I don't know. On the other hand, is it going to be year-round in any case? But as population grows worldwide and the economies continue to grow and expand and become more advanced, I think there's going to be a lot of shipping to go around for a long time to come. New routes may, in fact, be very beneficial.
George Hamlin, President of Hamlin Transportation, thank you very much for your insights.